today we're together with Jen Keefe, and Sandra Dodd wrote to us after one of our podcast interviews with her, and she said, you should really talk with Jen. And all I did was look up your website and saw the about page where I saw you with a coffee mug where it said, do epic shit. And I was like, yes, we are in. Let's do it. So welcome to our podcast. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you so much, Jesper and Cecile. As I said, I'm grateful to Sandra for sharing my name with you. And I'm grateful that you guys are doing this work because it's such an important thing to understand. And it's such an, as you both well know, an incredible option for families who commit to really learning how to do it well. So thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this podcast in general.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. It was one of our really big challenges in the beginning. Also being from Europe, where unschooling is just a small scale thing, from a country where unschoolers, you could count them on one hand when we started. All the information was American, and it's not the same. It's not the same culture. It seemed so very far away and so privileged for them because they were in their hundreds and they could meet up with each other, and we just needed information. So now we're trying to give back now that we are a bit down the road, kind of know what we're doing.
Though we would all agree, constantly evolving, right? Every time you think, I've got a good handle on this, you realize, oh, there's this whole next level that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. And Jen, as you also have old children, not old, but like teens, we would love to talk about that. But first, I think it could be wonderful to hear how it started for you and a little bit about the start, because I know a lot of the people who are listening in and considering unschooling or homeschooling, it can be overwhelming to listen to people who are just like, oh, it's so easy, we're just doing it. And all of us have had doubts and fears. So if you could share a little about your road down to unschooling.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And I agree, it's so important. You can tell by my sip of water, I'm getting ready for a long one.
Do it. Let's go.
I started out very messy, very, very messy. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm from the Boston area. It's an academic mecca here. There's a big emphasis on not necessarily learning, but formal education. And people start kids in their names are on the list when they're pregnant. Like it's a very dramatic scene for education. So there was that element of it. There was also an element that I had some mental health issues, pretty significant, but not severe. And so I had my own sort of demons I had to work through, right? And like figure out all of that. So I didn't start out in a great place to do I started out actually in a horrible place to do any of this. What I knew, now my oldest will be 16 next week, which is beautiful and just bittersweet in so many ways. When I was pregnant with Owen, we had a nursery for him. We had the letters up on the wall. We had the crib, and that baby was sleeping in that crib from his first night home, no matter how hard he tried to manipulate us by crying. We were set. Everything was ready. This baby was not going to disrupt our lives. Then, of course, I met him, and my entire world changed. And it was in that moment of meeting. I haven't told this in so long, so I might get his 16th birthday is next week. I might get a little.
I'm getting emotional, so you just go on. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! It's really this is such serendipitous time for this interview. So I met him, and my whole world changed. And in that very moment, I didn't realize it, but I felt it, that I wanted to be better for him, and I wanted him to have better than what I had in terms of, not that I had a terrible childhood, that's not what I'm saying. I recognized all through my own childhood that I needed more ability to choose. I needed support in different ways. Those first 12 years of schooling were not pleasant for me. So now I can look back when he was born and realize everything shifted in that very moment, from the moment that not only didn't we use that crib for him, we never put the kid down ever. He wanted to be with us all the time. So he majorly disrupted our lives, thank goodness. So I learned about attachment parenting, and that was just felt like a gift from the angels, because all of a sudden I wasn't the weirdo who wouldn't let my baby or wouldn't leave my baby to cry. I wasn't the weirdo who was really prioritizing a baby's needs. I wasn't the weirdo anymore who didn't want to leave my baby for a mom's weekend away. I wasn't the weirdo who didn't think I deserved a break. So that was the beginning of our unschooling journey, learning about attachment parenting, finding Dr. Sears, finding others who were doing it. When Owen got to be school age, which is 5 or 6 years old here in the Boston area, I felt like I was just starting to learn how to be a better human and like work through my own mental health issues. And our relationship had started to improve. I had used timeouts a little bit when he was younger, and I had realized I didn't need to do any of that. And so I remember it was one beautiful fall day, just like one that we have here right now. I was standing in the road with my 2 kids who were 3 and 5, I guess, at the time. And I felt like we were finally getting how this whole family thing worked. And he was scheduled to start school. And I thought, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. I'm just getting this. I'm just starting to be a good mom. Like, we're just starting to form this connection that I always dreamed parent and child, could have for us. And so I first started telling people, oh, we're holding him back because he just barely made the cutoff date. And I didn't want to tell anybody because homeschooling, I mean, this was now, 10, 11 years ago. It wasn't common, and it was not common in New England at all. And certainly not in my circle. So anyway, a friend introduced me to Sandra's work. And I had been tormented about the fact that in a few short months, Owen was going to be going to school. And I was devastated about the thought that we would be losing him. And by the way, we had tried a couple of preschool stints. We tried this amazing Reggiano preschool. It was in Italian. They had 6 kids. They baked their own fresh organic bread every day. I mean, it was like the best preschool you could find. And the teacher, he cried the first day I left him. And I listened to the teacher who told me to just leave him. He'd be fine. And that was the moment where I now know I cannot. And I called my husband, who was at work at a high-rise office building in a corporate meeting in Boston. He stepped out of the meeting. We have a lot that we argue about. This is one of his strengths. He stepped out of that meeting and he said, go get him. He said, she's not his parents. We are. Go get him.
Yeah.
So I did. I went back, and that was the beginning of the beginning for us. So I was introduced to Sandra's work from my friend Vanessa. And as soon as I started reading her work, I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is it. This is how we keep this thing going. And then it was just you said shit, so I'm going to assume I can swear on this.
Oh,
it
yes.
is.
Yeah. We're from Denmark. All is good.
Okay, good. It was just a shitload of work on my part to learn how to get to the place where we are now. My own personal mind, of course, my preconceptions about education, which I love talking about. I have a background in a small background, but I do have a background in education. So I love, especially now that I'm in the teen years, I love deconstructing those and looking at how they're all bullshit. But it was so, and really, I say this every time I talk, it was Sandra's work, reading a little bit of her work every single day. And that's what she tells us to do. Not just her work. Read a little, try a little, wait a little, watch, right? Yeah. And that is what got us here. I didn't take a crash course for a month anywhere. No. I read from Sandra and people Sandra recommended. Sometimes it was 5 minutes a day. Sometimes I got 30 minutes a day. But sure enough, over the course of a few years, now it's many years, but I am an entirely different person, an entirely different mother. We have an entirely different dynamic that revolves 100% around our family and our children, like you guys. It's Who thought that was a thing?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been, I can just very much relate. There was no way we could have known what it would become.
No, yeah.
No,
I was just thinking about back the day we actually put ours in a nursery, and I remember, peeling off his fingers from my arm. And when you told that story, I just got, fuck.
Oh, Jesper,
No, but to make people think it's normal.
Yeah.
That's what, well, I mean, I can live with the mistakes we have done, but I get sad and angry that people are standing there saying to you, oh, it's okay that he cries for 10 minutes. And then you actually get in doubt about your inner emotions. You're standing there with a child that is crying and you are just thinking this is wrong. And then the people in the professional level is saying to you, it's all right.
But everything, the whole
It's all right.
narrative is telling you it's all right. And they're telling you the kids will be missing out if they're not part of this, even kindergarten. And they're telling you they need professionals, they need same age kids, they need stimulation, all of this.
Yeah.
So you think you're doing the right thing. And you're
when
not.
when I was pregnant with Owen, everything was fine and it wasn't a bad situation, just temporarily. When I was a few months pregnant with Owen, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Very traumatic. It was very awful. It was this, I mean, a pregnant woman with cancer, that's terrible, right?
Yeah.
So then Owen was born, and the cancer situation went on for a little bit after he was born. And of course, I was discovering I didn't want this baby of mine to cry. I wanted to be for him.
Mhm.
And the pediatrician that we had at the time, who is wonderful, I still think very highly of her. But speaking, Cecile, to what you said about the professionals, thinking these are the people we should be listening to. When Owen, I was talking to her about all of this, I don't want to leave him to cry. It doesn't feel right. Her thought for me was, well, I think that you're probably spoiling him because of the cancer.
Yeah.
Oh man.
If there isn't anything more fucked up than that, like
but totally.
But at the time, Jesper, to your emotion, at the time, I listened. I didn't make changes, thank goodness, but I listened.
No, and it gives you an inner conflict about the measurement we have, which is our feelings, which is how we figure out what is right and wrong. And if you're actually told you cannot trust your own instinct, and that is wild.
That is
so much wrong on so many levels with the common narrative about childhood. Even the idea that you can spoil a newborn. What? I get it. You could spoil a 10-year-old. You could, but you can't spoil a nursing child. I mean, when they are so small, there's no way you can. It's really wrong. So I started blogging at that time when I had those insights. It's about the same time frame as yours. Well, I started blogging 12 years ago.
Yeah, 12 years ago.
And I did because of that, because this is the common narrative. And every time I speak to someone, I say the same things. I have to say them over and over and over. And when I see in mainstream media and I see the little brochure at the doctors and I get a letter from the government telling me now your child is this age and they need to learn to walk in traffic or start in kindergarten, whatever. All of this information that is floating out there, all of it is wrong. It's based on wrong assumptions. And I just felt we need some more voices. Someone has to sing another song here. So that's what we're doing.
It's so important. And it's why I'm so grateful that you all are doing this, because I agree with you completely, Cecile. And since we've been doing this about the same time frame, I wonder if you've observed the same thing that I have noticed in the last dozen years. The conversation is changing. 12 years ago, when you would see, on Facebook, for example, a thread about spanking, or a thread about timeout, or a thread in some way, in some other way that might be really detrimental to a child. It used to be, yes, of course you have to spank them. They're not going to know how to, be respectful. The conversation was always pro hurting the child. And I am noticing this last 18, 24 months, way more of those comments now are, why would you ever do that to a child? Like, there's this thing, I haven't watched it. I don't want to know about it. It is too devastating. Whatever it is with this egg thing, I don't want to know. I don't know if you've seen this. Parents are doing something really mean to their kids with eggs. And I'm not, it's like, do you guys know who Jimmy Kimmel is?
No.
This is a better one. Do you know about this is something, it's so upsetting. He used to do this, have parents do this trick at Halloween to their kids. He'd have, do you know about this? He'd have the parents pretend they were taking all the candy and the kids couldn't have it, and they'd videotape the reaction and show it on the air. horrible. The
Horrible.
conversation, oh, disgusting. And a group of us actually got together to try to figure out how the heck do we stop this? But that conversation 6-8 years ago was, this is the funniest thing. Look at, oh my God, I got to try that. Now, I don't even know if he's doing it anymore, because the comments now are, why would you ever do this to a child? Mm-hmm. So the work that we're all doing that started long before our 12 years ago, I feel like it is starting to have an impact. People are getting educated about this, and that feels really hopeful to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We had the spanking conversation before on the podcast, and here's something for you. In our country, spanking is illegal. So for me, even when you mention it now, I'm like, are they insane in the States?
Yes.
For me, it's what, 25 years ago they banned it. And at that point, no one was doing it. It was just an old law. No one had eliminated the right for parents.
Right. It was a technicality.
They had taken it out of the school. No one could spank the kids except the parents. And then they needed to remove that law too. And they did just about when I had our first child on my own, and then we met, and he adopted her. Yeah. So when I had my first child 25 years ago, just about there, that law was changed, but no one was actually really spanking anyone at that point, I think. And if they did, they would not tell anyone about it. It would be really So when you talk about it in the States, I'm always like, what?
No, but what makes me ponder most about this, and I'm like, that it's weird to think that, to look at, okay, my child is, I don't even like the word behaving. It means that the child should be in a certain way, but that is the language they would speak. My child is misbehaving, it gets a slap, and now my child is behaving. So what you're teaching your child is, one, fear the person who should be the most important to you, who should be your connection, who should be your everything, and you can solve stuff with violence. If you have Absolutely. A conflict, it can be solved with violence. And I mean, that's not the best future to show them.
To agree with you on that, we are also teaching our children, everybody loves this buzzword. No, it is not a buzzword, uses it as a buzzword about consent. Why don't we understand consent more? Why? And they'll say consent. And then, Jesper, to your point, we are teaching, we are insisting that our children understand that they are not in control of their bodies. They are not in charge of their bodies. It is up to somebody else what happens to their body. And so we're not just teaching the victim in that case, we're teaching the perpetrator. Our bodies are not ours. No. So yeah, it's yeah.
I haven't seen the Halloween prank, but I have seen another thing that shocked me. I got off Facebook because it shocks me too much. What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Oh. I saw a sibling t-shirt, a get along t-shirt. That was the thing at the point that shocked me really very much. So they would put siblings who fight, and they would have to share the t-shirt, and they would write something like "we get along" or whatever. And they'd have to wear the same t-shirt being like tied to each other until they would start behaving.
And these are, I've written about that one in the past. I agree. I mean, what is that solving in that situation?
Horrible.
Really. But these issues to me are such a great example of the change that I was talking about, like within myself, because it's not, we all, being on this side of things, we all know none of us is getting it right all the time. Even for me, still, a lot of the time, I'm not getting it right. I still revert to old behaviors, and I think, where in the hell did that come from? But it's not about that we never put our kids in the get along shirt. It's about that we're questioning, why are we putting our kids in the get along shirt? And am I putting my kid in the get along shirt is that what do I think that's going to accomplish? And is there something in here that I need to figure out? Do I not have the time to be able to work through this with them? Do I not have the resources to am I working 3 jobs and I just don't know what else to do? Is it just that I have old information? Am I dealing with my own inner demons that's not, that's making me just latch on to what somebody else? But for me, that is the change. I've done 3,017,000, more than that, wrong things, probably yesterday. But for me, it is always, wait, why am I doing that? Is that true? Or is that just what we've accepted to be true, or the solution, or the proper way to do things?
I think also it comes, I agree with you, and I'm just adding to it. It also, it has to do with this deeper level of parenting where a lot of, especially women, and I think because of the women's liberation, and women now have educations and they're expected to live their lives just like men, have nice careers and fancy clothes and big salaries and do all the same things as men would do in our parents' generation. They technique their life. It becomes a technique, becomes a job, basically, all of it. So you technique your looks. You have this facial cream and the face yoga, very fashionable at the moment. And you do the gym 3 times a week because that's the technique that would keep your body look like you're still 17. And you technique the childhood. You have to make them do specific things. It's almost like there's a chart and you can tick the boxes. Okay, this is my 16-year-old. He has to be like that, do like that. And the conversations we're having is about this, and the problems we have will be like that. And they go through this as if it's some sort of manuscript, some sort of, what's it called?
They want a 10-step process to change whatever this thing is. Yes, I agree. And we want to check it off.
The problem is they don't get to live. Then everything is a project and there's no heartbeat. There's no present moment because everything is on the to-do list. And I just feel so sorry for so much life going down the drain. So many moments that could have been moments that are tasks. And I think maybe this t-shirt problem is within that problem, because you think, oh, hey, that's a technique. I can fix their fighting by giving them this t-shirt. People on the internet say, if I do that, that will fix it. There's nothing it's as if there's nothing in between, no thinking. Which is
yeah. But yes, it makes me think about a subject we have been talking about, where one of the things we really wish deeply for our children is that they end up knowing who they are themselves, and that they rest inside themselves. Where I think that the way I've grown up with getting grades and everything, and it was important to have a career and all that. So for me, life is still projects. It is. I'm not sure I will succeed in letting totally go of putting things into a schedule like that and just be happy for just being. And I think that is one of the gifts I hope that we give our children through homeschooling and unschooling, that they will end up being happy for just being alive and being present and around people.
That's so beautiful. You're who I want to be when I grow up. I agree. I strive for that, and I'm further back from that point than you guys are. And I feel like it is, in so many ways, I agree, Jesper, that this is what this life can potentially set our kids up for. First, by the removal of all these systems and structures that are saying, this is what makes you successful. This is what makes you worthy. This is what makes you disconnect from all those people sitting in that classroom for you, because really you're in this group, you're this kind of person, you're that kind of person. And also, I feel like when we commit to learning how to unschool well, the process that we go through, even if it's on not as significant a level as you were just talking about, the process that we go through, in order to unschool well, we have to engage in that process. We have to engage in being in our bodies and here and now, and breaking down all those barriers and traumas that we've had in our own life so that we can fully connect with our kids. And believe that alone, I mean, that's not alone, that's huge, is setting them up to be so much closer to what you just described than what we all probably had growing up, because it's real.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I really wanted when I was a child was my parents' attention. And for many reasons, and I'm not blaming them as such, but they didn't have much bandwidth for that. And what I see today is that the family life that we have is very much about spending time together. And the more real I am, and I am real, that was so one of my first wild insights when I had my first child almost 5 years ago was, I'm never going to lie to this person. I have to be true. She has to trust me. If she does not trust me in everything, I will lose it all. I have no cards on my hand to try to help her into this life. So she needs to trust me, and I need to be fully me so that she knows who she's trusting. And I have 4 children, and I go to great lengths to make sure that I am honest with them. Yesterday, one of my kids asked me, "Are you having a good time?" We were at some friend's house, and honestly, I wasn't. Not that it was very meaningful for me to be there, and I love these friends, and please don't be offended, but no, but my daughter was having a lot of fun celebrating a birthday. There was a lot of teenagers, and it was great. But I was working too much. It was raining cats and dogs, and I hate rain. It's been raining for several months. Everything was damp. We live in a van. My friend was really exhausted, the one we were visiting. So I felt my job was to just do as much as I could, do the dishes, cook for 15 people 2 times a day, and, just put in my energy. So while I'm having a good time, I had a meaningful time, but I wasn't hanging out. So, and that's just one example. She got a little, but I'm not answering her to please her. I'm answering her to be an honest, authentic person that she talks to. And I can tell her, this is my experience, and I'm happy you're having fun with the teens, and I'm happy to bake the cake, and I'm happy to clean up after it, but I'm not chilling. It's not, it's not a party for me. It's work. So I think for them to know who they are and feel good about who they are, they need some leading examples who can be who they are and will be authentic and present and vulnerable with them, so that they know that when you are that, you're still loved, because it goes both ways. I very much am dependent on my kids. I need them in my life. I'm not some sort of, support structure system. I'm a human being, and I'm their mother. My trajectory in life is to unfold my motherhood. So if I don't have that connection, I suffer just as much as they do. And I think it's very, very important for them to know that we need each other both ways, and we're real people. And
that what you just described, I think, sounds so appealing to maybe even just so scary to other people, to being like who you are and being honest, and the feelings you might hurt along the way. Even like you mentioned, your daughter was taken aback that you weren't having the same fantastic time that she was, right? But I have had this, I didn't learn it early on. This is the last few years for me about telling the truth all the time. But I relate to that experience, Cecile, of being able to say to my kids, no, that wasn't actually enjoyable for me, but I am so happy to be there with you guys while you get to experience all this joy. And I do believe I am seeing in their teen years now that does build a trust, but not a superficial, like a real deep trust, because they know that you have told them the truth, which is not counterintuitive. I think it's very intuitive. It's not the messaging that we get about being honest about these types of things, right? And even coming to like conversations about the past. My oldest is 16, my youngest is 13, almost 14. And in my own friend circles, we've had conversations like, how much are you telling your kids about your past? My kids are getting older. I'm being more truthful with them than I ever thought I would be, because I learned a lot from the mistakes that I made. I want them to know me. I want them to know when they fuck up, I've done worse. I want, I want them to, no shame with me.
Life goes on, I try. So it's radical to say you've told them everything, because obviously you haven't given them a minute-to-minute report of what everything that ever happened in your life. But I have no secrets. I have a general rule of having no secrets. Secrets are very toxic, actually, in life.
Agree.
So get rid of secrets. And I don't have secrets for my kids either. There are things that don't seem that relevant. And when they were young, ours are
age appropriate.
Age appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but you can always give them a version of the truth that is just to scale with where they are. My first child didn't have a father. So the story is he was tall and he was blonde and he was not there when I woke up. And so I told her when she was little that there was no father, just like, single women having a child in the clinic. I had a child by accident. And in the beginning, I just told her, you don't have a dad. And then when she was a little older, I could tell her more nuances to the story. But if I had told her everything when she was 1.5 years and realized all the other kids had a father, she would just feel that she was missing out, or something was really strange, or someone didn't want her, which is not the case. So I wanted a truthful explanation for her that would also be in harmony with the emotional truth of it. And that's very hard to explain to a 1.2-year-old who realizes all the other kids have a father. What's that thing, father? What's that all about? I just told her we don't have that. Just like we're vegetarian, we don't eat meat. You don't have that. And then as the years went on, I could explain more about what happened and why she didn't have a dad and what that dad concept was all about. So in that way, no, I haven't told them everything. A, because it's very highly impractical to try to tell someone everything. And B, because some things are just not, okay, some things are not relevant and some things are not appropriate.
Yeah.
I think that's
sometimes telling the truth is, Owen, I really am not comfortable sharing this with you right now. Maybe when you're a little older, like sometimes that can be, and that has been a truth in our house too. Like I do have a story there, Owen, and I'm not comfortable sharing that with you at this point. And I like that too, because it gives them permission to know they don't always have to tell people things if they don't want to tell people things.
No.
Yeah.
At least don't lie about it.
That's,
I have a story here I'm not going to talk about. It makes me sad.
That's a game changer. Yes, yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. I'm feeling too sad to go there today. Yes. That idea of telling the truth changes a whole life trajectory. That's new for me. That's not something that I've had since becoming a parent, but that's an amazing gift to yourself and others.
Advice. It's a good piece of advice, whether you want to unschool or not. Just don't lie to your kids.
And or to anybody. And it's not actually as hard as I thought it was to do.
To your kids.
Especially to your kids.
Interrupting you.
No,
especially to your kids, because what you need in your relation, whether it's a task with a to-do list and you consider it more of a job in life, or you're the radical weirdo, I think was your word in the beginning.
Right.
You still will love your children unconditionally, and you want the best for them, and you really want to be able to take care of them. And the problem is there is no trust. You can't take care of them. They will not obey you throughout their entire life. But if they trust you, they will come to you as the first or the second or maybe the third person when they're in trouble, and you get to help them. Whereas if they don't trust you, you'll never know when their life falls apart. And that is what would freak me out. If I knew my daughter wouldn't call me the morning she wakes up crying. She wouldn't call me. She would call everyone else. I'm so happy I'm the one she's calling. Or actually, it's very often you, to be honest. So if therefore lying is not good, but lying to your children is shooting yourself directly into the foot.
It's building a distance.
Yeah.
There's this thing going around Facebook or maybe it's a t-shirt. I don't know, this idea of, I want to be the one when my child is in trouble, I want to be the one they run to, not the one they run away from.
Oh, yes.
Which, yes, it's true. And I would love for that to be followed up with, there are some choices that we have to make to reach that point. We can't just say, come to me. I promise I won't be mad. We're showing them whether or not they can come to us from the moment they're little up until forever. We're telling them with every choice, every interaction, whether they can come to us or not.
That is years of lived life. And that is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of conversation. When we talk about moral standards, what's the right choice to make in a certain situation? At this point, now we have this 24-year-old daughter who lives by herself. She lives with her boyfriend in Copenhagen. So she's not with us every day. But we have a 17-year-old son who's with us every day. And he's actually become the moral anchor of our family. He's the one. I'm sorry to say, but he's
you're doing it well.
Say, you know what? The ethical, is that a word? Choice. The right thing to do right now would be this. So why don't we go do that? And and he is there because he is who he is. It's not I can't own that. But one of the reasons that he has this way of reasoning is that we've been discussing ethics over his entire life, and he knows why we choose to do this and why we choose to do that, and the whole discussion, the hours of talking about things, they are present for it because they're not sent away to school or in bed.
Right. Yes. Yes. They're there with you as you live life together, like dealing with all the choices that come your way and all of the decisions that have to be made. They're in that with you. And that is so wildly different than how I grew up being away from all of that most of the day.
Dining at the children's table. I did that as a child. My children enjoy the adult all around age conversation.
Because you enjoy them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. We can talk about whatever.
You like being with them.
You have
No.
Yes.
No. No. It's the website, Jen, is called Pondering Jen.
Yes.
So I'm pondering about what you're pondering about.
So that website is pondering myself. Why am I the way I am? Yeah. Why do I have these reactions to things? And I am so proud of myself for how much better I am in the last few years. I'm so proud of myself. I've put in such consistent work to be such a happier, more responsive instead of reactionary person. But that website really started after a mental health breakdown where I really had to start to rebuild myself and really understanding, wait a second, I actually do get to choose how I am, who I am, and what my life looks like. I got that on some level when we decided to unschool the kids, of course, because I forget how radical that is. I forget how radical it is the way we live because we've been doing it for so long. But
I forget unschool. You don't get up in the morning to unschool.
No.
What thing you do? You get up and you brush your teeth and you start doing stuff. You don't do not stuff. I totally hear that one. I'm forgetting I'm unschooling.
Yes.
When I do the podcast or meet people who say, why are they not in school? Yeah.
And that was a good turning moment for me when I realized months had gone by and I hadn't even thought about like what we were doing because I had spent so much time invested in learning it. So that's really what that website is. I certainly have written about unschooling and my thoughts about mainstream parenting advice, we'll say, and all of that. And I used to write about it a lot more, but that really is about pondering how do I get myself better.
Yeah. And Jen, you are not the only one who have stood a place in your life where things, primarily one's mental health, have been challenging.
Yeah.
I think we all have tried that. What are the first couple of steps when you look back you took and that you would recommend other people are taking?
I love this. This is such a good question, Jesper, and I'm so grateful you asked it. When I'd always been, personal change was always something I was intrigued by, but I never really believed it. You know, after when I had my mental health breakdown, it was bad news. I mean, it was a bad place to be. And I did go to my doctor and get medication, but I actually did not go to therapy at that point because it was too overwhelming. And we were in a new place. We were in Denver. I'm from Boston, and I didn't know any therapists. And I could not engage in that action of going and finding someone who may or may not work, that whole thing. So I actually reached out to two friends of mine who had been really open about their own mental health struggles, and asked for some resources. And so one friend in particular, books are a thing for me. I love to read. The information comes in a really understandable way for me. So the very first thing one book I read upon her recommendation was, and this is an author who I had dismissed for years, and I still do not like what she says about parenting. I will say that up front, but Brene Brown's book, The Gift of Imperfection. It's a short, like 90-page book. And it was the first time in my life I had ever heard, it's okay that you are a fuck up. That's okay. You're still worthy. You're still as deserving of being on this planet and taking up space on this planet. No matter that you failed that math test when you were 12, no matter that you made these irresponsible decisions, no matter that you didn't get it at the beginning, like whatever the reasons, you're still worthy. And then learning about shame. And then there was the second book that I read, Self-Compassion by Dr. Kristen Neff, Nieff. That was another one that just in that moment when I was so low, allowed me to understand that the things I'd been trying to learn to do for my kids, I needed to learn how to do for myself too, because if I didn't learn to do them for myself, I could never fully do them for my kids. So for me, it was reading. It was not just reading. It was throughout every single day being aware of, wait a second, I'm in a moment where an old pattern, whether that was a self-destructive thought, whether it was a self-hate thought, whether it was a reaction to one of my kids needing me, throughout every single day, I had to be aware I'm in the moment where personal change happens. This is it. This is the moment. And sometimes I wanted to throw a temper tantrum within myself and say, fuck this is too, why do I have to do this? This is too hard. I want to go back to my old patterns, right? But I finally recognized it was in that moment. And then of course, the more moments where I chose the personal change, I started to see the return on investment, because I would start to see, oh, that did create a different outcome in myself and in my relationships all around me. And so the more that I saw that, the more invested I became in making the change in those moments. And those were the first steps I took, reading the things that resonated for me. And I recommend those books to people all the time. The Gifts of Imperfection and Self-Compassion. I feel like, and it went on. I read the Book of Forgiveness by Desmond Tutu, which was, I mean, I've got a whole list of books. That's the way I intake information. But those were my first steps. And just to take one more segment here and say, I literally cannot believe who I am now. I literally cannot believe who I am now. I cannot believe how calmly I respond to things. Not all the time. Believe me, not all the time. I just to be very, but I can own it way more quickly and apologize way more quickly and model to my children, you guys, I'm really sorry. I slipped there. I am really sorry. You don't deserve that. That was wrong of me. You're worthy, so how clearly I can think about things. And this buzzword of boundaries is a real thing. How I'm able to keep those now so that people aren't coming into my space and taking the energy that should be, and I'm not giving them my energy that should be for me and my family. So so those are the first things that I did and found extremely useful. And those were based on what a friend told me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So one thing congratulations first.
Yeah, first of all.
Thank you. I will take that. Thank you. Thank you.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, I've spoken to a lot of families who want to unschool. And sometimes they say, I don't think I'm a good enough person to do it. And here you are talking about having a breakdown in the middle of it. You have teenagers in your home and everything falls apart for you. And still they're not in school. And still they have no structured curriculum, mandatory things to do every day. I think that's a shining example just for everyone to see that you don't need to be the best version of yourself 100% of the time to be an unschooling parent. You can be vulnerable and you can be completely off and you can be even out of it for a while.
You can, but it can't be your normal.
No, obviously. But
yes. Yes. And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Cecile.
No, I said it. It's just because I think it's so easy to give up. For many people, it's very easy to give up. Within the first 3 or 4 years, they very easily give up. And then maybe if they have teenagers and they can't really find any friends or whatever is going on, then they give up again. And one of the things that make people give up is if they find, oh, but I don't have the personal strength for this. I'm in a phase in my life. I have a crisis. I don't know. There's something going on. I can't be the best mother. I think they might be better off with someone more resourceful. And here you are sharing a story about falling apart and getting it together again and growing from it.
Yes.
While not putting your kids back into the school system, which I just find it's a beautiful story. Of course you can't. Well, you can. I'm not sure. Maybe you can.
Well,
I could actually unschool and be out of it all the time.
That's what I was trying to address, and I didn't. That wasn't a disagreement with you. I don't want that to register as a disagreement with you. But I have seen people who many people who say that they're unschooling when they're really unparenting. And one of the things that I really like to always say is, if you feel like you're not good enough, you aren't. Either get better or make a different choice, because it isn't fair to your child to, we come from the understanding of we've delved in, we've learned, we're fully in it with our kids. But if that is too much for you to get to, make the brave decision of doing what's best for your kids, because unparenting, letting your kid not being involved in your kid's life is not unschooling. And it frankly gives us all a bad rap. It really does. Yeah. There are too many people who are not doing anything and calling it unschooling, because it can look similar if you don't know what unschooling is. It can look similar. It really can.
Then again, not. I mean, I think it's quite clear, at least if you think about it for a little while, whether it's unparenting going on or unschooling going on. I think maybe for the beginner viewer, it could be looking like the same. But I want to put a footnote on that thing about if you don't feel you can do it, you probably can't, and you should either get yourself together or do something else. I've talked to too many women with a too low self-esteem who think they can't do it, who can totally do it. Totally. And we just have to make sure that if you can get up in the morning and you can talk to them about whatever the weather, it doesn't have to be resourceful and about some Greek mythology. If you can get up in the morning, you can get dressed, you can get your kids dressed, you can make the meals and maybe clean up after them 80%, depending on how many toddlers are in the house. And you can, make the boat sail. That's actually enough. And you might feel like shit on the inside and have some demons to work with and some things going on. That's okay. As long as it's not getting in the way of everything, as long as it's not a clinical depression going on for 5 years, but just your own self-esteem being a little to the low end.
Absolutely.
Give up on that one. So that was my footnote, and you were saying something more interesting.
No, I agree, and I'm glad you put that footnote in, and it leads, I feel like, to a conversation of coming from different places in terms of what it means feeling like you can't do it. Because to me, feeling like not being able to do it is not being able to not challenge, that sounds so aggressive, not being able to evaluate your belief systems to make the changes that you need to make in order to unschool well. If you're not able to do that, this is going to be a really hard road for you. But the other things, when people say they aren't able to unschool, I've been in another mind frames for so wrong. At the beginning, typically what they mean is they can't teach their kids algebra, right?
Yeah.
That's real. And I agree with you 100%, Cecile. And I will add to that footnote by saying that's bullshit. That is not a reason to not unschool. Your kids don't need algebra, number one. Secondly, if they want to learn algebra, you are going to find a way for them to learn algebra, period. Trust us. It is out there. It happens.
And it's not step one.
And it's not step one. Step one is what you just said. Get up, get dressed, make breakfast, play. That's step every day, whether they're 16 or 6. That's step one.
Yeah.
Or don't get dressed.
Well, sometimes get dressed.
I think that one of the...
Or at least change the pajamas.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest gifts of being an unschooling parent is the connection we get with our children. And then the second biggest gift is actually the connection we get with ourselves. I have grown so much on this path we have been on. And I'm just very, very happy for Storm, who more than 11, 12 years ago said to us, Mom and Dad, I don't think this school thing is the right stuff for me. And then we listened and chose not to. But the way it has changed my life, I mean, I personally, egoistically, is so grateful. My life is in all ways so much better. I'm healthier, happier. I have a better relationship with my wife. And I just love it.
It's hard to understand that what you're saying is real if you haven't lived it. Right? If you're coming from...
You get to live. That's basically it. You get to live. You're not waiting with the living until the kids fall asleep at night, or waiting until the weekend or the summer break or your retirement. You get to live every day.
And this living is kind of nice.
It's kind of cool. I like it.
It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing.
It's pretty amazing. And, to get to the, like, I don't know, whatever side of it you want to call, what is the not the coolest. It's not the coolest, but what is a super cool thing to observe about this is how we all really do. It's not a tagline. It's not a slogan. We really do all learn every single thing we need to know by living.
Yeah. True.
And that moment where you stop looking for the learning moments, when you realize you haven't looked for a long time, is really awesome. And then every once in a while, my kids will say something or do something. And I'm like, how did you guys look? How do you know that? How do you know how to do that? And their answer is always, we're a human living on this planet. And I'm like, yes, of course. Of course, that's why.
Yeah. I kind of want to circle back to that. I don't know, maybe I'm obsessing over this you can't do it idea. Because there's another thing I just thought about. Because you said very often it's about people thinking, because I can't teach them algebra, I'm not worthy of unschooling. But I think we have a problem with social media as well. That a lot of home educating families are very resourceful in making very nice videos on Instagram and Facebook, and they take pictures of homemade, organic, vegan ice cream that they somehow manage to get to the middle of the forest when in the middle of the summer, and it's not even melted, and you don't get why. And they always look like a yoga, I don't know, 17-year-old, and they have 19 children, and they all look amazing. And you just think, I can't do that. think it's very important that we also get real about, sometimes you just sit on your couch in your pajamas, or it doesn't have to look amazing. You don't have to go on day trips or climb the mountains or to museums, or not that we do it all the time, but only because we feel like it. I think a lot of parents are set back by the idea about how it has to look.
Yes,
and
Cecile.
realize that, we're actually just watching TV all day. You know what? Just watch TV. It's okay.
Yes.
Netflix is great. Eat some popcorn. And go buy a cheap ice cream in the supermarket and eat it on your couch if you want ice cream. It doesn't have to look like that. And that's another footnote. And then we can go back to that, whatever.
No, I think that is so important and so beautiful and so wonderful for people to know. And it's this idea that we hear a lot, but again, it's really true. Unschooling really does look so different in every family. It can look different between siblings within a family, right? I have one child who is a massive extrovert who now at almost 16 wants to be with friends every single day of his life. I have another child who is far more introverted, likes to see friends. But so how my husband and I work together extremely closely to make sure their needs are being met on a daily basis. So even within a family, unschooling can look different. We watch a boatload of TV. We watch so much TV. So yes, yay to the TV. And they are learning the coolest shit about all sorts of things from, oh my gosh, writing and set design and all these cool things. But it can look so different from family to family. And when anybody tries to suggest that this is how it should look, they don't get it. Whether they're suggesting it on their social media or telling people that this is how you do it, because my experience is that it is 100% about us working through our own stuff to be able to fully connect with our kids, to create a peaceful life with them so that we are in tune and connected with them enough to understand what they're asking us for, what they're telling us, what their needs are, that they woke up this way this day. And so the thing they had planned yesterday when they went to bed has now shifted because they're having this kind of day. And instead of having to go through 2 hours of fighting and conversation, we can get there so much more quickly with them. And we understand the importance of then making adjustments based on that. So it looks so different within every family, based on so many things, resources. If we had the resources, a couple of us would travel all the time. That's all we'd do. A couple of us would not want to do that. A couple of us really like to be home, right? So it would be, Did I go off on a tangent? But
no, you didn't. This is all. I happen to feel like mentioning social media because I think it skews the picture of how it's supposed to look, because people making content for social media about their home education life very often make very beautiful content because they're passionate about making content, and then it looks amazing. And those who are not, and maybe don't have that very nice sofa and very yoga fit body and do the homemade ice cream, they might feel that they are inferior as homeschooling or unschooling parents. And I just wanted to shout out that they're not, and that it can look in so many different ways and still be the greatest life for the kids.
Yeah, but I think the feeling inferior is like a global pandemic these days, that it's and I actually believe that people who are unschooled and have been at home and have been loved unconditionally, they won't become adults who feel inferior. We have done a wonderful interview with Summer Jean, who is a grown-up unschooler, and man, the power in that woman and the presence and the respect for herself, she was there. It was almost terrifying meeting a person so clear on themselves. So I believe that we will help grow generations of youth who do not grow up with feeling inferior. But it's every day, it's every time they doubt on themselves, it's every time we come with demands to them that while we are evaluating them, then we are breaking it down. And it's a long process to get there. But I feel that's what I said before. The greatest gift with the homeschooling for me is it has helped me to remove the not all of them, absolutely not, but remove some of the layers of am I good enough? Because we are. And I hope and believe that the children we see grow up with the grown-up unschoolers I have met, I'm like, that's a road to success. That's what I want for my children. It's not what they do or work with. I really don't care, but it's the being anchored inside themselves. That is, man, I want that for my children.
I love that. It is beautiful. And I do believe, as I am totally trusting that you two do as well, that this work that we are doing to be able to unschool well with our families, I believe so solidly that it is changing the world on a massive level. I really do. I believe this work that we do as parents of unschooling parents who are really invested in learning how to create this with our children, not just saying we're unschooling, but are putting the work in to be able to really unschool well. I just believe we are changing the world in a way we can't even understand.
I actually believe we're just doing the footwork, just laying, the cement under the floor, because it's our kids who are going to change the world.
Yeah.
Because they stand
but
on
we
a
are
different
too.
ground.
Every time we learn how to react more appropriate, how to respond instead of react, every time we learn how to connect more deeply with our children, every time we learn how to respect what they're saying to us and hear them, I believe every one of those actions is changing the world right now.
Right,
I really do.
Sure.
I really, really.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. And I know I was just, when you said it, I was like, yeah, and I still have stuff to learn.
Oh, to be clear, like how many more ways can we say how imperfect we are and we don't think we're better than anybody and we mess up every day, like all those disclaimers that you want to put on.
Doing something better than the majority.
Yeah.
You think that the choice is better. I believe in my choice. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal. I don't believe I'm I'm more worthy human being or anything like that. But I do believe that what we do is better than not doing it. I do believe that. Otherwise, I wouldn't invest all that in unschooling.
No, a lot of hours.
Yeah.
Good hours.
A lot
Jen,
of
we try to keep our podcast around an hour, so we should kind of round it up.
Okay.
We didn't even talk about teenagers.
We wanted to talk about teenagers.
Do the second round and talk about teenagers.
We will do a whole teenager talk.
Teenage talk.
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
Actually, you said before we talk about teenagers, let me just say this, and now an hour just flew by.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so we have
one on teenagers.
we should.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Jen,
Wow.
for people who want to get to read some of the stuff you have done and get to know you, can you tell a little more about what they can find on your website, and again name the website and also your social media channels?
Thank you, Jesper. I don't really write very much there at all, but ponderingjen.com, and I do sometimes write on Facebook under the same page, Pondering Jen. I also have a podcast that isn't about unschooling. It's called Real Women's Work. It started because of a question my daughter asked, so there isn't a little bit of an unschooling connection there, but it started talking about specifically how women work, and it's sort of evolved into this kind of work, the mental work that we do as well. So now it's a combination of those things. So Real Women's Work and ponderingjen.com. I haven't been doing a ton with either, but there's some stuff there that people could check out for sure. Thank you for asking that question.
We'll put it in the notes.
And we will also put the links to the
titles of
books
the
you
books.
recommend.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And then we'll get back to you on the teenage question.
Yes, we will.
My favorite.
Oh.
It was a pleasure
a
having you
pleasure
and a
talking to you.
wonderful talk. Thanks a lot for your time.
I'm so glad that I got to meet you both, Cecile and Jesper. And I
Likewise.
just,
It's been a
again,
pleasure.
thank you for doing this work and living this example. There's just,
Likewise.
yeah, there's nothing better than having real people to learn from and watch. And get insight into how they're doing this and making it work. So thank you.
And thank you for talking to us. It's been fun.